My name is Davin Cardenas. I'm with the North Bay Organizing Project located in Santa Rosa, California. We're about an hour north of here, where we're sitting right now. And we organize around immigrant protections, tenant protections, and protections of our Mother Earth. We're also part of the Right to the City Alliance. And so that connects us with a lot of people across the country who are proposing visionary solutions, a visionary framework to the crisis that we face. We use a model where we talk about first stabilizing our communities, really grounding our people in what they need, but not just physically, like our physical needs, but also, can we remain living where we live? Do we have the right to our city, the right to live in the cities we live without fear of the incredible displacement crisis that's taking place here in San Francisco, in Oakland, in Santa Rosa, in San Jose, and every other large city and small towns across our country? So we talk about stabilization, making sure we have what we need to stay. And then we talk about community planning. If we're stabilized, can we democratize that process and start community planning where frontline communities are thinking about what solutions they're going to put forward once we're somewhat stabilized, because there's never a full degree of stabilization. And if we've done community planning, can we then move from planning to community control, right? To community control over how housing is created, developed, funded, how renters relate to landlords or government, or hopefully have not to relate to landlords and government, but really control their own spaces and their own acreage throughout the country. We produced a report last year called Communities Not Commodities, and some of the numbers that came out of the report said that a quarter of renters in the United States pay over 50% of their income to landlords, right? 50%. That's an incredible shift of wealth from one class of people to another class of people nationally. And it really strikes us because it makes it very difficult to build generational wealth that other Americans have, that have allowed them to stabilize and go to college and inherit wealth and get ahead. We're losing that. Working communities in the United States are losing that ability because our wealth is being shifted to the corporate landlord class. It also said that on a daily basis, there's an average of 7,400 evictions across the country, right? And that's what Teresa was speaking about. 3 friends last week that lost their housing. And I mentioned numbers, but numbers also have faces and hearts and souls. And so it sounds like statistics, but these are human beings that we're talking about. These are human beings that we coincide with every day. And so I don't want to just leave it at statistics. These are fellow humans on this tiny rock that's spinning through space, right? We in Santa Rosa face the renter crisis directly. We, over the last 6 years, our rents have gone up 60%. There's a 1% vacancy rate. Last October, the wildfires wiped out 5% of our housing stock in the city of Santa Rosa. And so we understood directly what it meant to try to stabilize our community because there was a huge degree of push out. We began working on rent control issues in our city because a very organic process took place. We began knocking on doors talking about voter engagement about 4 years ago, and we came across an apartment complex of 10 Mexican families, and there was a midterm election coming up, and we're like, hey, what's going on in your community? Get out the vote. And they're like, oh, you want to know what's happening in our community? They just raised our rent by $500. There's roaches and rats. We have black mold, so our babies have asthma. So that's what's happening in our community. And we're not the kind of people that are like, well, go out and vote, go get them. We said, oh, okay, this is something. So we began gathering them, organizing them, and within 2 months, we had brought in some legal resources. They began a rent strike. They challenged their landlord, which goes against our intuition. We don't challenge landlords. We don't challenge mayors. We don't challenge sheriffs, right? It goes against our intuition, but they had the courage, the collective maturity to actually do that. They then became voices not only in their own case, but in promoting rent control in the city of Santa Rosa. fast forward 2 years later, they actually win $2.75 million from that landlord. So their babies are gonna go to college on a slumlord's dime, which I think is actually a very beautiful thing. I was telling someone recently, I was deposed in the case, in their legal case, by the landlord's lawyers, and he made the claim that we were advancing our socialist leftist conspiracy by conspiring with these landlords to take on the slumlords and advance rent control. And as they were saying that, I was thinking like, wow, I wish that was the case. I wish we were that forward thinking where we would have done that. But it was way more organic, right? It was more organic. So they've stabilized, and we're trying to create policy that stabilize more and more families. But luckily, we're part of an alliance nationally that is talking about, we have Our Homes, Our Land track that talks about community control over land. So we have national networks where now those tenants are talking about community land trusts, collective ownership of land, and furthermore, when we talk about the community control, we're talking about our compañeros, compañeras in other parts of the country where they've stabilized, they've defended their homes, and now they're beginning to buy homes. They're beginning to create collective ownership over those lands using community land trust model, beginning to bid for homes that they were about to be kicked out of. And on a national level, we're thinking about thinking solutions like socialized housing, like public housing that's actually democratically controlled and run by tenants, what we call social housing, where government actually reinvests and takes the landlords. Our report also points out that 96% of housing in the United States is commodified. So somebody is making money off of our ability to live safely, calmly, and with the resources we need. So we go from the very local, grounding ourselves and making sure that we're not just fighting. We can't always fight oppression. We have to be visionary in our approach and how we begin democratizing the solutions around us. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.